Boom, boom, boom. Welcome to Franchise Mode. We are here for another episode. We got the NBA free agency coming. I got another banger special guest, one of my closest friends. We're going to introduce him in a second. Again, you've been showing love on the Spotify, the Apple Podcast, and the YouTube. I really appreciate you all. Keep doing what you're doing. We're going to have a banger episode. We're going to talk about all the drama coming up. Stay tuned. All right, so I got one of my closest friends on here, Isaiah Kitt of the Isaiah Kitt podcast. Make sure you all are following and subscribing to him on all of his social media platforms as well. He's also an American University student, broadcast communications major. So, again, Zay, thanks for coming on.
No problem, Ron. I have no problem coming on doing your podcast. I know you're starting something new, and innovative. So I'm glad that you brought me on. NBA free agency, got a lot to really talk about and dive into.
Yeah, so I told you we had a special guest. We're going to be talking about a lot of NBA free agency, a lot of drama that's coming. So for this segment, we're just going to start right into it. Kyrie Irving actually opts in, doesn't get a new deal, just opt in. What was your take on this whole scenario?
Well, I've been going around a couple people's platforms discussing this issue and this situation with Kyrie. And ultimately, at the start of this whole juncture, my thought process was he'd be back in Brooklyn. Just looking at what was being laid out on the table in terms of him possibly being traded or so forth, it was no surprise to me that he picked up his player option. I mean, it made sense. For instance, a lot of people talked about him going to LA with the Lakers. He would literally have to take the $6 million mid-level exception, and he'd be losing in that fact like $30 million. Like the math just wasn't mathing. Yeah. So it made sense for him to pick up his player option. But then you got to think about over these past 3 years, Kyrie Irving's only played 103 games as a Brooklyn Net in 3 years. Out of the 229 games that the Brooklyn Nets have played in the regular season, he's played 103. So his lack of availability has been in question and has been a problem. And it's not that he's dealt with his injuries. And Kyrie can be a bit injury prone, but now over the past several years, it's been just any little thing. And I'm not trying to minimize those situations, but anything has really deterred Kyrie Irving from playing basketball, whether it's the January 6th insurrection, the bubble year where he was a healthy scratch, going down to the bubble, and he was the guy on the league call saying we should not play in the bubble. Obviously this past year with the COVID mandates and the vaccine mandate in the state. Yeah. And I like Kyrie. I think he's a really good player. But the talent speaks for itself. But his availability has always been in question. So if you're Brooklyn, you couldn't give him a long-term deal. Like after these 3 years, you can't let that happen. So it was no surprise that he came back and opted into his contract. And a sign and trade still could be on the table, but if I'm a betting man, I bet he plays for the Brooklyn Nets open up the season.
Yeah, it seemed like he just wanted to play with Durant, because this comes into question. Like, for one, where was Steve Nash during all this?
Yeah.
We all know he said him and Durant said we don't need a coach. This is like almost 3 years ago now.
Yeah, right before they hired him.
It still ain't been like that type of coach-player connection. Mm-hmm. Nash still has been basically out-coaching damn near every playoff series he's ever coached in his career.
Absolutely.
He's been a liability for the team. It still seems like the players aren't playing for him. Like, he ain't no Eric Spoelstra. Like, players aren't coming to let me, I'll get a good coach. That's been weird.
Right.
Then with the player option, they said that GM found out on Twitter when Woj tweeted. So I'm like, you said you hate the media.
Yeah.
But you didn't tell your GM, or GM was not informed of your decision before the media.
Yeah.
So it's just contradictory. Then he's like, I'm going to take the road less traveled by. Well, the road less traveled by would be to take the money, because the road that would be not less traveled by would be to take the $6 million.
Yeah.
Because no other team was allegedly going to give him the max deal. Like, that was the rumor.
Right.
from Windhorst and Woes. No team besides the Lakers, who are definitely you can be, we even
desperate
to take them, including like the Hornets. We're talking bad teams. No team in this contract.
That tells you all you need to know.
It does.
I thought, and honestly, when I saw these reports coming out, I'm like, reports just don't come out. They just don't come out for any reason. Like someone in his camp is leaking these stories to gain leverage because Brooklyn this whole entire time had the leverage. They were the people that was going to have to facilitate a sign and trade or him getting traded or him being moved elsewhere. So I think his camp, they try to put out these stories, these list of teams that, were supposedly interested in Kyrie, who none of them had the cap space. And then come to find out, like more than half of those teams was like, we're actually good on his services.
The Heat literally came out today and said we would not trade Kyle Lowry for Kyrie Irving. They said Riley went to Lowry and said we will not trade you any package for him. They would say they wouldn't trade Hero for him. Like, we're talking about like 6 men to like, well, Kyrie's like 35. Like it got that bad with the Kyrie situation. Again, like you say, he's a great player, but the availability, the social media. I mean, if anyone works at any job, like your best ability is just to come to work. Like you don't have to be the employee of the month, but like, can you just be here from 9 to 5? Like that's the bare minimum. He has yet to check the bare minimum box off. Absolutely. Then in the playoffs last year, he played terrible. Then in the other playoff, he got hurt. Then the first year, he didn't go. So it's like you haven't got any revenue for the team. Like they're probably over it too in Brooklyn. They're just cutting because they don't want to lose Durant.
Well, you saw the report before he opted in. They were like, "We'd rather lose both of these guys because if we lose Kyrie, we trade Kyrie, that means Durant is going to be out.
Yeah.
So we'd rather lose these two guys, these two Hall of Fame superior talents, than to go through what we went through last year. That tells you all you need to know about how Brooklyn brass feels about this whole Kyrie Irving situation. Yeah. And it's not really Durant. It's just Durant is being loyal. But it's like Kyrie, he comes with a lot of baggage.
Yeah, I still this Durant is also a character too. You see what he's been doing on Twitter. I mean, it's hilarious. I love to see it, and it makes my job a lot easier. But clearly, he has his own agenda too. Like he just does what the heck he wants to do. Yeah, he wants to play basketball. He doesn't really care about the drama.
Yeah,
I guess him and Kyrie have some bond where he clearly understands Kyrie more than the rest of us. But I do want to move on to the John Wall, to the Clippers. Him allegedly going to that team is not finalized yet, but they're saying John Wall, when he clears waivers, will be a Los Angeles Clipper. What was your immediate takeaway when you saw the Shams report?
John, obviously in the past 3 years, he hasn't played. I think in the past 3 years, he's played like 40 games. But I think like over the past 3 years, he's made like the top 5 money in the league. So, what do you mean every year? Yeah. So like he's been getting paid and he's healthy, he's getting wealthy. My initial reaction to this Clipper move for John Wall, and I try my best not to bait into the Clippers, but it's just so damn hard. It's so damn hard because they've been knocking at the door, and really the Clippers, it's not a bad situation. It's just that we know, like, it's kind of like that Clipper thing where like
the Chargers.
It's too good to be true, And honestly, outside of Golden State, a healthy Clipper squad is really, really dangerous and a problem out west, honestly. Like this team is a year removed from making the Western Conference Finals without Kawhi Leonard. And they took that Phoenix team to 6 games. And Paul George had a hell of a playoff run along with Reggie Jackson. Yeah. So the Clippers have a lot of elements to their roster and their team as an organization that I really like. I believe in Tyronn Lue as a head coach.
He's a top coach.
Yeah. I mean, like I would argue he's probably a top 5 coach of basketball comfortably. And then you think about the guys that they have on the perimeter. You obviously Paul George, you get a healthy Kawhi Leonard. And then you get guys like Norman Powell, Robert Covington. They still have one of the Moores,
Marcus Man, the Moores brother. Reggie Jackson, the starter who played good last year.
Who played really well. So, and John, he is your prototypical point guard. Now, he has struggled to stay healthy. I'm sure he's not as athletic as he once was, But John, he kind of fits what they have been in search of since Kawhi and Paul George arrival, which is a pure point guard.
Yeah, floor general.
Yeah, a pure floor general. I'm really curious, and you can let me know. Does he start or does he come off the bench with this team? But I think
I would guess if I was Kawhi and Paul George's agent, I would want John Wall to start because he's a willing passer. Not that Reggie Jackson is not, but some things are just like a gift that some players have. Some players just Reggie Jackson on his best day just couldn't do what John Wall does in his sleep, passing the ball wise. Like we saw what a Ricky Rubio did for a Cavs team before he was injured. John Wall's better than Ricky Rubio even last year. So it's like if he can just be that good of a just make his open threes, which he's done. I mean, he shot with 38% on catch and shoot over his last 3 years, like 40 games. But
it's a small sample size,
very small. But he's done it. He can. We know he can pass. We know he's still. I mean, he's not an elite athlete, but like we see, like even Westbrook, like they're still better than like 80% of the league.
Absolutely.
So it's like, seems like he's. I think he's hungry too. He's, he seemed like he's a spotlight kid. I think he's going to be really good with them. So I liked it.
I liked it too. I think this, like I said, outside of Golden State, and really you can put Golden State in this equation. I just think Golden State, I'm gonna give them a little bit more. I'm gonna give them respect. They are the defending champions and so forth. But you look at outside West, like outside of Golden State, the Clippers could possibly be the second best team in the West if they can remain healthy. Because I think they're that formidable of a legit contender out west, and throughout the league, really. I mean, not even just out west. I think the Clippers, when their guys, and we know who we're talking about, like when their guys are healthy, they're really good and they're a really tough out.
Like literally, probably on paper, they probably have the best roster in the NBA. Like, they just do. No team has probably 10 players that play in the playoff. You're like, oh, okay, I play that guy. Like their worst guy at 10 is like Luke Kennard, like 40% from three.
We forgot about Luke Kennard and Nicholas Batum.
Yeah, Batum's like their 11th man. They still have Terrence Mann and Zubac. We didn't talk about their actual starting center. Like literally, they probably don't keep Isaiah Hartenstein because he's probably gone. They can't freaking everybody. Yeah. But it's like they're so deep. Like it's gonna be hard to beat this team. Like you said, even long as Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are in the playoffs and they play.
Yes.
Even if one or two guys go down, they'll still have an 8-man rotation. Even if so they can fight an injury versus like we saw Boston, Robert Williams doesn't play. It's like he maybe plays now for one game, but like he don't play for 3 games. Like who's gonna guard your rim?
There's a deficit there. Yeah.
So it's like, like the Clippers can actually go small ball with Golden State. It's gonna be interesting. Now Golden State has experience though, and Golden State has the chemistry. And they have more, I think, of a cohesive team. But
yes,
like you said, the Clippers have Ty Lue. They have probably one of the greatest GMs of all time, Jerry West. The owner, Ballmer, is one of the richest men in the world. Doesn't give a rip clearly by the tax. You can see that. So I think they have a good nucleus. It's just like Kawhi, like it's just Paul George. Like it's just like if this was if somehow like if any other like if Curry was on this team or the Joker or LeBron or Durant, like they're winning championship. No one's questioning it. But it's just Kawhi's on that level, but like he's like a Kyrie. How much can we trust this man? Like he's Paul George. He's hard to trust too. Great last playoff series, but like these are just hard. Like if you were a betting man, you had $1,000. It's still hard to put your 1,000 on this team just because like it's a scary bet.
It is. It's a boom or bust for me.
Yeah, literally. Okay, now before we end the segment, Dejounte Murray today was announced to the Atlanta Hawks. It's rumored this first. It's supposed to be it's a lot of unprotected picks there. They have a 2027 unprotected first round pick from the Hawks for Murray. They also have some other like BS picks, but like those will be like, lower level. But the 2025, 2027 are unprotected.
Okay.
Very rare in the NBA you see that far back. The Lakers will refuse to give up an unprotected 2027 pick.
Yeah.
Even with LeBron on the team. So it's like, that just shows you that. So what was your reaction to Dejounte Murray to the Hawks?
It's funny because I text you right before this move. Like I didn't even know facts. The rumors were swirling around, but I didn't know like the move would happen like literally an hour after I text you about this. And I was like, what does this do for them? Because you look at out east, you need someone that can guard the Giannis's, the Embiids,
John Collins,
the
I
John
guess.
Collins, even a guy like a Tatum, a Durant. Those guys
Brown.
are tall wing, either wing players or interior forcers, like
Yep.
and forces. And with Atlanta, I think this move, it definitely sells tickets. Like
Yeah,
this is
for
gonna
sure.
be an offensive explosion. Trae Young, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he led the league in total points and total assists this past year. So like it's no problem in terms of offense and what they can do. I'm sure they're gonna get real creative with how ball dominant. And I say this, offensively, and adding Dejounte Murray, it takes away that element of, or that stigma of Trae Young being so ball dominant, because he's a smaller, right? He's a smaller point guard, smaller guard, and as the postseason wears on, it wears on your body, so the usage won't be as high, and he'll have another guy that's like a really good playmaker, really good ball handler, high level guy too. I just think defensively, you're going to lack, obviously. Like you're going to be lacking in a lot of spots in terms of defense and size. I'm not sure on the salary of Dejounte Murray. I will have to like double check
It's
that.
18. It's 18. He's a very favorable deal. The deal is
Okay.
a great deal.
Okay, so he's on a pretty good deal. So it gives you some flexibility to really remove her and make some more moves in terms of adding size and defense. But right now it sells tickets, but I'm not sure if I can really solidify them and say this team is going to be like a contending team out east.
I was thinking, because my question was, we know teams they're just not going to beat. Like if the Nets are healthy, I just can't see them beating the Nets. We know they're not beating the Bucks if the Bucks are healthy. Even Boston, I don't see them beating Boston healthy.
Miami maybe.
So like Miami and Philly. And it's like, I don't know if I trust them against Philly. Like, why? Like Ben Simmons, they did beat them when they had Simmons. I think James Harden, you can say he looks washed and everything. He's still, I think, a top 20 guy in the league.
He's still a 19 and 11 guy.
Yeah, like he's not the best, but come on. You have Embiid, who was dang near the best player in the league last year.
Yeah.
Maxey's getting better.
It's progression.
He somehow got off the Danny Green contract and got Melton off the bench. Like they're going to have some guys in it's room to get PJ Tucker. They have Tobias Harris.
Yes.
I'm not sure if this puts them even above that team. So it's like you gave up those picks, and we can't guarantee Trae Young and Murray will even stay together in 2027.
Right.
Actually, I can guarantee they probably won't. Just what history shows you, most likely they won't. So now the Spurs, who realize that Dejounte Murray is a great player, but he's not a top 20 player. So it's like, what are we going to do? The situation that the Wizards are in. Like, yeah, he's cool to have, but like overall, he's a Drew Holiday to a championship team. Like, he's not even the Chris Middleton probably to a championship team.
Right.
It's like we saw what Drew was when it was just Giannis and Drew. He was over. It was a little too much.
Right.
It happened to Murray. Luckily, they have other scoring options there. But I think Murray would have been better suited to a Bucks-esque team or a Clippers. I said that maybe
I was going to say the Clippers we just talked about.
He's the third guy.
Right.
Perfect. A+. I don't care what you give up in that case. But if he's your two, it's like it's going to be tough to win.
Right.
You don't, especially, I love Trae Young. I think he's definitely top probably 12, 13 guy in the league. Yeah. But like we clearly see, like you need a top 5 guy, truthfully, win a championship. Like, absolutely. Or someone that can at least rise to top 5 basketball. Like even with Tatum, we said maybe Tatum can do it. He was top 10. The difference between the 10 guy and the top 3 or 4 guy was huge.
The gap is huge.
And you can say Boston even had a better team than Golden State going into it. People said that. So it's going to be tough. We don't even necessarily have a top 10 guy. And you're trying to beat Embiid. Like it's going to be tough. And Embiid now, if some health breaks Kitt, then they could definitely get to the Eastern Conference Finals. I can see that happening again if the health
for sure
is the health league, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough because now your second best player. I don't think is a top 20 player. I think he's a great player. I don't know right now today he's a top 20 player in the NBA. It's really tough. I don't even think.
I agree.
Very tough to be a top 20 player in today's NBA. So it's like you have one player that's not a top 7 to 10 guy probably. Your other guys in top 20. How far can you reach with that type of ceiling?
Yeah. Especially looking at like I know some people that really think Giannis and the Bucks can have like, a couple years where they just are dominant in this Eastern Conference. And as you said, like we have seen over the past couple of years, like you need a guy that can take you, like that can rise their play and their ceiling to top 5 caliber.
Gotcha.
And I'm not saying Trae Young can't, but we saw it with Tatum. I think a lot of people would say Tatum is a top 10 player.
Yes.
In basketball. But is he closer to 10 than he is 1? I would argue that he's closer to 10.
To 10.
And even with I would say a team in Boston where their players are in their prime, Golden State's most of their players are even out of their prime or not, like, or at the tail end of their prime. Boston had guys that were in their prime, young, and have more two-way players, and Golden State won in 6 games and won
an A+ coach. And an A+ coach and an A+ GM.
Like with Atlanta, I think I want to see them get back to what they were defensively, because the year they got to the conference finals, they were not, it wasn't their offense that turned their season around. It was their defense the second half of the year that they played under McMillan. So they need to get back to that identity. But this gonna put butts in seats. It's gonna sell tickets. Like Atlanta, it's gonna be really buzz. It's gonna bring some real buzz, and it could be a real trade, like free agent destination for players. But as of right now, I'm not sure if I can comfortably say that they're a top 5 team in the East.